Akeeba extensions. I had been contributing to Joomla for many years, and if you're using Joomla, you're definitely using code that I have written, like two-factor and multi-factor authentication, Joomla update, logging in with passkeys, and much more. But just like every hero or villain in a story, there is an origin story. And my origin story is actually a CD-ROM. Namely, oops, sorry, let me try that again. There. Namely, it was a direct CD where I was storing all of my documents, a copy of my documents when I was a student. If you are old enough to remember direct CDs, you will remember that you would put a CD-ROM in the drive, you would put some files there. It didn't close the session. Then you could add more files and read from it just like it was a very slow hard disk. But they were also very finicky. And I learned about that the hard way by trying to get some of my older documents one fine morning when I figured out that the CD-ROM was no longer working at all. I couldn't read from it, let alone write to it. It was just dead. And this was something that annoyed me and bugged me because it introduced me to the concept that the data we keep on our computer is not permanent, it can be lost. So years later, when I started working on making sites and general web development, it led me to getting interested in the idea of taking backups and being able to transfer my site between servers. So why would you even need to take a backup of a website? Well, mistakes happen. It's very easy to accidentally delete the wrong thing or start making modifications on the wrong copy of an article. And before Joomla had a history, an edit history of an article, even if you made a small change, you couldn't easily recover it. Now at least there's that. But still, if you go ahead and delete something and then empty the trash, you end up having lost something. Broken updates do happen because software is written by humans and humans can make mistakes. And no matter how much we test something before releasing it, it is possible that there is some combination of factors that we hadn't thought about it, which might bring a site down. Natural disasters happen. And this might sound a bit funny, but I know of sites which have been lost because a natural disaster struck the data center of the hosting company. A few years ago, you might remember there was a very big fire in one of the OVH's data centers where they lost absolutely everything, their main systems, their backup systems, their storage, all of it. So people who were relying on their host to keep their data safe lost everything. People who were smart enough to take their own backups and keep them somewhere else other than the same OVH's data center as their own server didn't have a problem. I mean, they still lost a few days because they had to find alternative hosting, fix their DNS issues and stuff like that, but they didn't lose any data. They were up and running within a few days. People who didn't have that foresight, some of those sites never came back. And of course, hacked sites happen because it doesn't matter how careful you are. There might be something that you missed. Your site gets hacked. What do you do? If you don't have a backup, it's going to be a very long, arduous, and expensive process to fix your site. I touched a bit on that before. There are hosts who take backups. So why not just use that? First of all, how often do they take backups? Usually it's like once a day or once a week. Does this align with when you make changes to your site? Or restoring one of those backups will mean that you lost a lot of work in the meantime. How many backups do they keep? Usually, they tend to keep anywhere from 3 to 30 days of backups. What if you discovered a problem which requires you to roll your site back to a much earlier version? What if you need to somehow take a look at what was going on with your site like 2 months ago or a year ago? If you just rely on your host's backups, you don't have that option at all. Um, what do they back up? Do they back up your site, or do they back up your entire account? Does it mean that restoring a backup from yesterday will also lose you all the email that you received in that time? Because in many with many hosting environments, this is indeed the case. Where do they back it up to? Are they just backing it up on the same storage as the main storage of the web server that you're using? Are they storing it in the same data center? Because this makes it vulnerable to different issues. The entire server may go down. It may have bad storage, or uh, something might happen physically to the server. There have been more than one cases in the past 5 years where someone's server was physically removed from the server rack by accident because a police force decided to seize a server, and unfortunately on the same rack there was an innocent server which also got removed. What, when, and how can you restore from your host backup is basically everything that we said before. If I cannot restore just what I need, then I'm going to be overwriting more than what I wanted to change. And finally, and most importantly, can you even test the restoration, or you just take it on good faith that when you need it, it will be possible? Because with most hosts, no matter how flexible they are in their backup schedule and what they back up and what they let you restore, the only restoration target is your own site. I wrote Akeeba Backup because I needed things to be done which host backups couldn't do for me. With Akeeba Backup, you can back up your site whenever you want, either manually or automatically on a schedule. You can keep as many backups as you want and as fine-grained as you want. So it can be absolutely your own very custom backup strategy. You can back up what you want and nothing more, which means that you may decide that you want, let's say, to take a full site backup every day, back up some very critical database tables every few hours. And once a week, you also want to include your huge images folder where you have videos and PDFs and whatever more. You can choose to store the backups on your server, which I do not recommend unless you just want to also have that copy there for easy restoration, or anywhere else, which can be something like Amazon S3 or one of the many, many different S3 compatible services. It can be on Azure, on Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive, etc. You can restore the backup whenever you want and wherever you want, even on a different server or on a test subdomain on the same host. Uh, it's up to you, whatever fits your needs and your use case better, which also means that you can test the restoration anywhere, including on your own computer. And I always recommend that people do test the restoration because it will tell you if there is a problem about what you have included. It will also let you familiarize yourself with the process, and that's very important. If you know what you're going to be doing in case of a restoration, you can do it without stressing. Trying to figure out how a restoration works when your site is down and you're already very stressed is the worst time to learn how to do that. In the end of the day, and I have said it for the past 15 years in my presentation, Akeeba Backup does not make it possible for you to back up your site. It only makes it a little bit easier for you. Beyond taking backups, I also got interested in site security. So when we say uh, site security, we mean making it more difficult for an attacker to be able to take control or otherwise modify your site. And you may think, but I have a tiny little site that hardly anybody visits, or it's like for a small company or whatever. Why would anyone attack it? Well, you need to think about why do sites get attacked at all. They do not get attacked usually because they make a big juicy target. They get attacked because the attacker can then use the hacked site to host malicious files. They can use uh, in an attack to another target or in a mass hacking attack. They can use it to send spam. Basically, they have an ulterior motive, which usually translates to either money or information, and not necessarily from you. How do they find your site? Very easily. Your site is online. It can be found. If I want to find new Joomla sites, it's very easy for me to just do a simple Google search with a generator tag for Joomla, and I will find them. An attacker can also be monitoring domain registries and find out which new domains have been registered and monitor them for sites that come online on these domains, etc., etc. There are so many different ways where they can find your site, and it, it doesn't require them to do something very complicated, and it's not something that you can do about, because the goal of you having a site is that it can be found in one way or another. Can you be absolutely protected against an attacker? No, you never can. This is something that you need to keep in mind. Uh, Securing your site is never about making it unhackable. Such a thing does not exist. If such a thing existed, people would be selling it to big companies and governments and be trillionaires. Instead, what you can do is make your site much harder for an attacker to succeed, which means that they will not spend too much time trying to get into your site. They will try to find something that's easier to attack. And this is the entire concept of security everywhere. Like when you're securing your house, you put a reinforced door, you put cameras around it, you put an alarm system. None of these will stop a very determined attacker who has specifically targeted you. But most people who would try to break into your house will see all that security and be like, yeah, you know what? No, it's too risky. It's too much work. I'll go to an easier target. That's the idea of adding security. When you're trying to secure anything, you don't want to have just one line of defense. Very famously, just before World War II, the French tried to create a, a defense line across their borders called the Maginot Line, but this provided a single layer of defense. If that line fell, France would be invaded. And this is exactly what happened. The line did fall, did fail its primary reason, and France was invaded. What we have learned from this is that when it comes to security, we need to have many different layers of defense. There is also Something else that you will see, especially in aviation and industrial security, which is called uh, uh, Dr. Reason's model of failure analysis. And you can think of it as having slices of, uh, of, of cheese with holes, of Swiss cheese. And try to shine a laser through a stack of those slices. It will only work if all the little holes of the cheese on each slice align with each other. If you have one hole, if you have one slice, sorry, it's very easy to find a hole and shine the laser through. If you have two slices, it becomes harder. If you have 100 slices, it becomes almost impossible. So that's another way of approaching the idea of having layered security. When it comes to website security, you need to think about your operational security before your information security. In other words, first, it's how you behave before whatever technical measures you take. Um, as a very simple example, if your administrator password is admin and your administrator username is admin, um, you're going to very likely get hacked because that's like one of the first things someone would try. If you leave your devices unattended in public places, you increase the chances of you getting hacked because someone can get into them when you're not paying attention and get your secrets, and so on and so forth. Then we need network level security, which is denial of service and distributed denial of service protection. Basically, what we would say um, a firewall in front of your server. This used to be something very expensive. The past like 15 years, it's not. You just need to get a service like Cloudflare or Banner and they do that for you. Then you need server level protection, which is what your hosting company will be doing with their operating system, firewall, and their monitoring systems. And then we come to what we can do for our sites. Application level protection. This is using a security extension like Admin Tools Professional, which will catch all sorts of different modes of attack that someone might try against your site. You can do integrity checks, which is basically making sure that the executable files on your server did not change without you knowing it. This is also something you can do with a security extension like Admin Tools Professional. And it's also something that you could conceivably do by having backups, extracting them locally, and comparing the files between two backups. And of course, having backups of your site, because if all else fails, you don't want to either lose your site or have to spend a lot of time and money to fix it. You want to be able to restore it from a backup after you have figured out why the site was hacked and immediately fix the reason it was hacked. And just like with backups, you might think, but my host is handling security. Well, yeah, kinda. Your host will not teach you how to be secure. That's the operational security. This is something that you have to figure out for yourself. Some hosts may have contracted a third-party service for denial of service and distributed denial of service protection. Most of them do not. So you need to know if they don't offer that kind of protection, you need to provide your own. The hosts who offer protection, they say that they offer you a web application firewall. In reality, what it is the Apache Mod Security 2 module with a default rule set from OWASP, which has not been tailored to the needs of your site. There are rules there for other CMSs like WordPress. There are rules there for things that haven't been an issue since Joomla 1.0 point something that was released like 18, 19 years ago, but might get in the way of you using your site, I have one of those rules in mind, which does not let you edit a contact with ID 1. So if you ever try to edit contacts in Joomla and you got a 403 right away, and you're like, oh, Joomla doesn't work, please talk to your host. It's one of their OWASP rules that they need to disable, and they know how to do it. Many hosts say, oh, we do malware detection. Not quite. What they do is pattern detection in PHP files for things that can be used both legitimately and not, which is to say, this really doesn't help much. I mean, if a file has a lot of base64 encoding and decoding and using gzip to compress and uncompress data, they will flag it as malware. Incidentally, this is exactly what you need to do to extract a Joomla update file and update Joomla itself. So yeah, many times they will also catch Joomla's own updater as malware, even though it's obviously not. And yes, your host will tell you that they're taking backups, and we already talked about that and all the asterisks there are in this statement. The idea is that if you want to have a secure site, you need to combine security habits, the things that you do, with network level protection, basic server protection, a security extension, and a solid backup plan. Security habits is up to you. Network level protection is usually a third-party service that you have to purchase. Whether you want or not depends on the kind of site you have. Most small sites really don't need it. Basic server protection, usually your host will be able to handle that. It's 2025. If they can't do the basics, then why are you paying them? And it's up to you to get a security extension, configure it correctly for your site, and make sure that you do your own backups so you're not left out in the cold. And now I want to talk about the other thing. You have built a site. Now what? Like, yeah, okay, you put all the work, you put it up there. It doesn't run by itself. It does require a bit of recurring work. You need to install updates for Joomla and extensions and PHP and your HTTPS certificate, though that latter bit is usually managed automatically by your host if you're using Let's Encrypt. You need to renew your domain. And as I said, you need to deal with security and backups. And if you have built this site for a client, you will also need to make reports for them to show them what is the work that you're doing. Why are they paying you after you have delivered the site? This can all add up to quite some time. It is also a bit error prone since you have to keep track of versions of everything, of renewal dates, and all such stuff. So the more sites that you manage, the easier it becomes to drop the ball. I mean, you can say that it's the cheapest solution because it doesn't cost you anything except your time, which also means that you value your time at €0 per hour, which isn't the case. So it actually does cost you something. I mean, if you have 100 sites and you spend all day taking care of the sites, then how are you making money, right? There are alternatives to doing it on your own. One way is to use some third-party site monitoring service. There are quite a few. One of them, Backup Monkey, is made by German people, and I believe they're part of the organization team of the event, so you can go and talk to them. The benefit of using a third-party service is that it's completely automated. You don't have to spend time. It's very accurate. It will never forget to do things because, it's automated. It's fairly easy to do. It does have a cost though, which usually scales with a number of sites. The more sites you have, the more you pay. And even when there are unlimited or practically unlimited plans, they usually have a fair use clause that they say that you can have up to this many sites. And the biggest problem that I see with using a third-party service is that there is vendor lock-in. Like you're using this particular uh, service to manage your site, you're only going to be using this particular service forevermore. Otherwise, you will have to redo everything that you were doing for each site on this service on whichever other service that you choose. And the other option is self-hosted site monitoring. There is Akeeba Panopticon, which is completely free of charge that you can use on your own server to do that. There are also other solutions. I believe the other one is called Your Sites, which is also self-hosted. You still get the same benefits from a service in that it is automated and accurate. You don't have to deal with it. However, it does have a minimum amount of setups that you need to do to essentially run your own service, which is far less than writing your own service, but still you need to do something. However, it has a fixed cost. It doesn't matter how many sites you have, you're only going to be paying for the server that is running this site monitoring. It doesn't matter if you have one site, 100 sites, or 1,000 sites. And of course, you own your own data. It's not in someone else's computer. It is under your control. If you put it all together, you will be able to have your own backups stored outside of your web server. So it doesn't matter if something happened to your web server or your hosting company, or if your business relationship with the hosting company breaks down, you will still have your sites. You will have your own site security plan, which will protect your site in a way that you understand and control, and is better than the one size fits most that a host can reasonably provide. And you will be able to monitor, update, and do all the upkeep of your sites in a mostly automated way using software that is running on a server under your control, and you will be owning your own data. So with all of that together, you will be able to run a very smooth operation, managing dozens to hundreds of sites, even if you're just one person. As I said, my company is making a lot of Joomla extensions. So I basically talked about three pieces of software that I make: Akeeba Backup, Admin Tools, and Akeeba Panopticon. We have a lot of them. We also do Akeeba Ticket System, which is a help desk component. We do Akeeba Onthos. It's advanced extensions management, which allows you to find leftover, slightly broken extensions and stuff like that and remove them, even when Joomla itself won't let you remove them. There is AI Tiny, which brings generative AI integration into Joomla's TinyMC editor and the third-party JC editor. And in a few weeks, it will also be able to not just do text, but also images. There is Skeleton Key, which is free of charge. It allows you to log in to your site as any user, as long as you're a super user, which is great if you're trying to troubleshoot one of those, but it only happens to my account kind of issues. There is Social Login, which allows you to log into Joomla and create Joomla user accounts using social network logins, such as Facebook, GitHub, Microsoft account, Google account, Apple account, etc. That's also free of charge. And there is Amazon S3 file system, also free. It allows you to store files in Amazon S3 and use them in Joomla's Media Manager. And now, if you would like to ask me any questions, that would be the perfect time. I, I don't know if you guys have a microphone there so I can hear you. Yeah. No, no questions? I was so clear. Wow. Uh, Surprising. I didn't expect it. All right, then. Uh, One sec. I want to come back to that CD-ROM that started that whole saga more than 20 years ago. Uh, I eventually found out a way to access the data on that CD-ROM. It wasn't completely destroyed, as it turns out. It's just that the file system that DirectCD was using was very finicky. And if it thought that the last time you wrote data to it, it hadn't finished properly, it just wouldn't let you read anything. But there was third-party software which allowed me to recover everything. So at least there was a good ending to this story. And of course, this whole saga made me start doing the software I'm doing. So there's that. Thank you very much for watching.